Hi, I'm Dr. Steve Collins from the University of Central Florida.
And I'm Dr. Mariam Al-Kazmi from the Gulf University for Science and Technology in Kuwait.
And we're here to talk about the mass media in the Middle East. So when you think about the government influence on mass media in the Middle East, and more specifically in Kuwait, where you're from, what should students really know about that?
Okay, so when we're talking about the Middle East, it's a big region with many different countries. Kuwait is located on, the Gulf near Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Iran. And Kuwait in particular, one of the things that makes Kuwait's media unique is the fact that if you look on the map put out by the Freedom House, which is an organization that tracks freedom of the press around the world, if you were to look on their map, you'd find that Kuwait is in a different color than the neighboring states. And the reason for that is simple. There are less restrictions on the media in Kuwait than there are on neighboring countries. And if you're going to look at the Arab world, there's the GCC states, which includes Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Oman. Kuwait has the most freedoms with regards to the media than any other country. From the countries listed at least. And one of the interesting things about this is that there is both a state-run television, there's a state-run newspaper, but especially in the early 2000s, we see more privately run newspapers. And in 2006, there was a law that kind of changed the way newspapers are licensed so that more newspapers can emerge, essentially. And so in the early 2000s, when around the world, the number of newspapers in most countries began to decline because most people started to turn to the internet to get their news. One of the interesting things you find in Kuwait is the number of newspapers tripled from 5 to about 15. And I think 2 of them are in the English language, the rest are in Arabic language. And there are different newspapers are owned kind of they're owned by different kinds of people essentially. So in terms of government, that's one of the main things to look at. Now today,
and what about government influence on broadcasting?
Government influence on broadcasting is the same thing. There's also new television stations that emerged around the same time that are private, and there's also state-run television channels for both sports as well as news in English as well as Arabic. So the interesting thing is, you can't really look at the Middle East in 2016 without thinking about, what happened in the last 5-10 years. The emergence of the Arab uprisings across the region and the use of social media has really been quite big. And as a result, there's been this need to regulate the new online interactions that occur. And I think that's a challenge anywhere in the world. And it's definitely a challenge in Kuwait as new laws are emerging. And, it's always a challenge to kind of figure out how to balance both the freedom to discuss and to engage in public debate while still protecting security as well as there's all kinds of intellectual property rights and so forth. So there's a lot of different concerns there. So with regards to the question of how does government relate to the media in Kuwait, that's
Okay. Let's switch